Coaches, today before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, CoachPad. No matter if you draw scout cards by hand or use a program on your computer, the CoachPad will give you back time by never stuffing a binder again before heading out to practice. First 13.3-inch electronic device allowing coaches to clearly display scout cards outdoors in the sun has been a game changer for programs this past fall and those currently planning all across the country. This new technology allows coaches to coach and not the monotonous task of stuffing and dealing with binders on the practice field. Check out the CoachPad and CoachPad Mini on thecoachpad.com. Please make sure you check out our sponsors, our affiliates. And here is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have Scott Girolmo with us. He is the new head football coach at Prince George High School. Coach, how you doing?
Doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, Coach. Kind of before we get into the dart and wrap stuff that you came on to talk about, how did you end up going to Prince George this upcoming year? Where was that kind of background and leading up to that?
Yeah, I've just finished up at Battlefield High School here in Haymarket, Virginia, and I loved it. Wonderful kids, people, community. We had a good season this year. Great job. But my wife, as so often these things go, is from Prince George County High School. And she grew up in Prince George County, and they happen to have a vacancy. And during COVID, we really found that we were trying to gravitate towards family as much as we could anyway. And we felt a little bit isolated out in Northern Virginia and the northwestern part of the state. And when the opportunity came to go and live and work in the same community as my mother and father-in-law, the family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, we prayed about it and it felt right. It just felt like what the Lord wanted us to do. And so, we decided to dive in head first and do that, with the future in mind, a quality of life that we could provide our two kids, Reagan and Will, that would be the best that we could possibly do for them, give them the best support group they could have, and in that small town, atmosphere and the feeling of community and a sense of support, and that people love them, care about them. So that's really what brought us down there more than anything. And it's what brought me to take the head coaching job there. And I'm excited. Can't wait to get going. I'm about to get started right now. This is the time of year you can get the initial stages put together for what you want the new culture to look like. And we're trying to find staff. We're building a heck of a staff already. I'm really excited about that, and fill a couple more spots before you know it. 90 days it can be over. We'll be kicking off.
There you go, Coach. We threw back several ideas on what we kind of talked about today, and we kind of landed on dart and wrap. Just part of it is because I don't have anybody really talk dart. Obviously you run a more unbalanced spread power offense, as people kind of see who are watching right now on the screen. But what is dart wrap for you? Is it a primary pay, a complementary pay? What does it kind of in your system look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is a gap scheme that is in its essence really just a variant of A gap power, classic A gap power play. The difference, I think, in reason why we go with a title of wrap for it is because we have a tackle that pulls. It just happens to be an inside tackle in an unbalanced five-man surface. So when I look at it, and when you teach it, truly what we do is try to keep things as often the same as when we teach across the offensive line. And so what we aim to do is take really all the teaching we've already built in our normal five-man surface traditional A gap power play or counter play or, gap schemes, right? And transfer as many of those as possible into this is the as same as teaching philosophy. And then, there are going to be a couple of variants that you build from there because the attack point is slightly different. But truly, man, once you really cut it down, and when we get done talking today, you're going to find out, man, this is the exact same run play as the A gap power.
Okay.
The other thing I would tell you is that I think this is going to be kind of interesting going forward and taking over a new program and just taking a look at what we have offensive line wise. The reason why I gravitated towards some of these schemes in the first place was to try to maximize personnel and really just highlight your best offensive linemen and then protect your guys who are less skilled. And looking forward, having to identify those guys quickly and then put them in position and teach them these new schemes will really help me to get better. It's a great challenge because it's going to help me to get better. I'll find out where I am not very good, and I'll find my weaknesses in the teaching progression, and I look forward to that because I think it's an opportunity for me to grow.
All right, Coach. So, like I said, let's kind of continue with. I mean, obviously, you have the formations up right now in terms of what you guys do. A little more two back, obviously on the screen. But is that primarily where you run your dart and wraps out of? Is it a more two back oriented offense, or do you getting some one back depending on the situations?
Yes, the offense that I like to run, if possible, is an 11 personnel using some sort of a hybrid tight end of fullback. I just think because we like the personnel a lot, and because I love formations and I love to just be really, really multiple. That position in particular gives us so much freedom, just depending on the type of athlete that's in the game at that time. And I really, really like to use that guy, if he can block, as our primary hammer. If he can't, then we protect him in other ways. But a lot of what you'll see is really conducive to the most popular personnel grouping in America in the last 5 to 10 years, which is 11 personnel. And it's the spread power mentality that you'll see on Saturdays pretty much on every dang on channel that you watch.
Okay. And you mentioned formations there. Does for your dart wrap, does formations really alter anything outside of obviously altering defensive alignment, but from a rules perspective, does that factor in at all to how you run dart or wrap?
No, the fun part I think about this is that once you take the tackle from one side of the line of scrimmage and put them on the other, or in our case, once you formate your offensive line so that you've really, you've got your best players where you want them. So, for instance, if you didn't just take the tackle from one side or the other, if you really formatted it and put maybe your best drive blocker there and your best puller there, then what you've now allowed yourself to do is highlight their strengths and, really get a centric play that you can flip the offensive line and run in either direction with the same amount of effectiveness. The thing that I think is great about the formations for us, at least, is that what we call short power or this wrap scheme, all right, really just involves the front five. And if we want to block the C gap defender in a classic, type kick out style block, then that's just a base scheme for us, what we label as 12 or 13 in our terminology. If we don't want to block that guy, then we just add a tag that initiates an inside mesh between the quarterback and the tailback, and we cruise him. So we arc around him and let him be the wrong arm player that he wants to be. If he's really going to squeeze and spill and he's going to wrong arm, then we just let him and we pull the ball and take the C to B gap because it's a shortened edge for the quarterback.
Okay. Now I see you have them running pass routes off this as well. Do you like the RPO a lot off this? Are you more of the Brent Dearman school of power RPO? As I'll phrase it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the one thing that any of those tags do, including secondary reads and third level reads in the short pass game for quick game in the second level, and then also shots, is it protects those base run schemes. Is it gives you an opportunity, in our case, philosophically, to attack one high when we get one high, which is ultimately what we're trying to do. We want a run game that's effective enough that it forces the defense into a one high. And then once they get into one high, we want to create a passing game, or in this case, an RPO game that can really exploit matchups against one high. So, we have a ton of really just great examples of how to take a high school kid who can throw a quick game, 3-step quick game, and give him the teachings that we've stolen from people like you mentioned. All right, that to get the ball out to the perimeter, to get the ball into the short hook zones, flat zones in the secondary when the defense overplays this and other schemes that are out of similar personnel groupings.
Okay.
So
that's perfect, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, I can show you any of that stuff too. That the thing that I like about, I guess, all of it is that, much like what you see out of Dearman and company, right? My favorite to highlight is Phil Longo over at North Carolina, and he's just a hero of mine. But much as you see out of these guys, it's really, how do I protect our base schemes? How do I play reasonably fast, and how do I make it so it's just like reaction for the quarterback and the wide receivers? It's not really thinking; it's just playing.
Yeah. No, I get that 100%. Now, like I also saw your base drawing was a bear. Is that the common reaction you get from people, is more of a bear oriented look? Or actually really how many, since you're unbalanced trying to run these dart wrap power schemes, how how much do you variety do you see in defenses?
Yeah, I always like to draw our gap schemes and most of the schemes up against the bear or the tight front first, because unlike you see in a lot of clinics, um, that's the one that gives you the problem.
Yeah.
You don't draw it up against the 6 box, the classic over or G front 2-backer, because it's, in general, it's easier to block those angles. It's much harder to block the bear. And truthfully, that's the one that we want to practice against the most, because oftentimes when I've gotten into this, it's because we're playing an odd front defense, we're playing a bear front in general, and we want to try to get the unbalanced set to get them to shift so that they can declare a new center, so we can uncover our own center. Because in high school, it's so hard to get that center comfortable against a really, really good nose who's beating his face in to snap the ball back to the quarterback 5 yards. So that's why a lot of our base playbook is all drawn up first against bear, because it's going to give us the most problems, and it's the one that we want to make sure we block right first.
Okay.
So, rules wise, you can see that I've got in everything in our playbook, I've got it drawn up against 4 main fronts, because they're the ones we see the most. But buddy, we see some interesting looks to this. You don't know what you're going to like. The single wing guys will probably tell you, because I've met with some of them who are terrific coaches. They don't know what they're going to get, so they have to practice against a bunch of stuff, because you never know. High school kid or not, taught or not, they may not line up right, or they may line up funny. So,
yeah, no, I get that 100%. From a technique standpoint, what are kind of like the main coaching points you focus on for your kids? Obviously, you want your wrapper there to be probably your better puller, obviously.
yes.
But is there any kind of focus on technique or coaching points that you focus on for this play?
Oh, tons. I could dive into this really deep, but the first and most important is when you teach that gap double team or combo on the play side. There's a lot of great ways to go about teaching it, but for us, we have really two ways that we give these guys answers. And essentially the quick tackle for us becomes the leader on the play, and he gets to really make a decision about how the play side A gap is handled. If and there's like I said, there's two ways. We either come together and combo with that quick tackle coming over the top to take the backside ID, or we zone that and let the center come off and the quick tackle becomes the drive player. And we have to practice that a ton, just like you would anything else. But because it matches up with what we already do in our gap schemes, there's really not a lot different than anything else we would do if we were running power counter tray out to the play side between a guard and a tackle. The only difference is, right now we're talking about center or snapper in this case, and then quick tackle. And the combos there can sometimes distort the defense so that really this play goes in the backside A to B gap. And I got a couple of interesting examples of what I'm talking about here. When we look at the cut-ups, and I'll come back to this, but the typical defensive end that's doing what he's taught to do is going to try to spill really, really hard. So the next most important skill is really to teach that H or Y, what we call the Y, the fullback tight end hybrid guy you have, the blocking back, really to teach him to be able to identify off of his angle whether he's going to win that B gap, or identify that he's really going to get wrong arm spilled and he's going to really need to drive and seal. And teaching him to do that, practicing to do that, starts with the technique is release. We like to try to squeeze him down in the backside A gap if we can, so he's as close to the line of scrimmage and he's as close to the attack point as possible. And his footwork for us, we make him take a 6-inch step with his backside foot first, so that we get a chance to come off the ball as the left tackle, or in this case, the quick tackle. We get a chance to let the scheme develop, and then he can attack at that inside-out angle with the near foot to near hip to near shoulder and forearm strike on the kick out. I think that technique, more than anything, is absolutely critical. And you can see even if we've got great angles, even if we've done a good job, if a defensive end's well taught, he's going to strike the hip or shoulder or that quick tackle. And if he's trying to wrong arm and spill, he's going to end up underneath you. So for us, it's really seeing that and practicing getting on his outside hip now and just absolutely letting his momentum take him down into the center of the line of scrimmage, because we know we have to pull around the outside. And our puller, in this case, is reading off of that. And that's probably the next most important bit of technique there, is to have the pullers really work off of the same idea, is they're just tracking somebody else's butt. So when they see the butt of the kick out guy, and if you don't see cheeks right at you, then it probably means he's had to log that player. So you're going to need to go outside. And we generally have these guys playing in positions that they're used to playing. So that's our pulling guard there. He's going to be our best puller. He's probably our best guard when we're in a 5-man service. So it's really just transferable skills from one position group to another.
Now, how many different RPOs can you tag off this as we keep going through this? I'm just out of curiosity. How many different things can you tag if you want to? Or, because I was listening to Coach Dearman, earlier in the week, and he was talking about how he tries to install like one a day, but they all fit within his system. So,
oh yeah,
everybody's a little different on how many they have. But just out of curiosity, how much do you try to carry at a given time?
Yeah, I don't really know the exact number, I'll be honest with you, but not many. What I think is at least been most beneficial to us is to find what skill set our kids have that fit them and their routes the best, and then just kind of craft either what we call a shot or a hot based on what their skill set is. Okay. If we have an X receiver that is really good against man coverage, then we'll throw a lot of glance, all right, which is kind of what we're looking at here. We've made a living off of that this year in the what we should call the COVID season, right? Yeah. In this spring, this weird spring ball, we really were able to isolate that X receiver against a one high. Everybody's playing a lot. Well, not everybody. A lot of people are playing this rip Liz match defense, which really gets them into a one-on-one with corners because they're trying to get 8 into the box, and it kind of gives you an opportunity to throw those routes. The best of the routes that we have are really just quick throws that help protect the base scheme, help protect the things that you are already doing, and it might just be a matter of, for me, just tagging the 6 quick game routes that we have, which are typically mirrored to throw against really off coverage. And then for the quarterbacks, when we do have 2-man route combination, it's being able to identify where like you'll hear from Brent, where the primary or most dangerous force defender is in regards to the actual run scheme itself, and then craft a quick game to attack the vacant, whatever. In this case, he'll probably call it the D gap run fitter, right? The extra hat to attack that open void. I don't think that we do anything specifically revolutionary, but I do think being able to identify those very quick and easy throws that the quarterback can make, that you feel comfortable throwing, that are higher percentage, are what really makes the long end makes the difference in completions. Some of the most common ones, and really our favorite, is just to work the glance to the single receiver side and give it an alternative. So if the corner's playing 5 or more often inside, many times we won't throw that if the matchup is against a receiver that we just don't think is as fast as that corner. Okay. So the quick break for him is a speed out or a hitch. And the quarterback doesn't know if he's running speed out or a hitch before the snap. He just knows he wants to throw it to him, and then he nonverbal signals it to him. So I'm going to tell you nonverbally what I want you to throw, and we have a number of ways that we do that. And then out to the field, I like to throw slot fade. I just think that for us, it's been it's been a very lucrative pass route. What we ran and what we had a lot of success with this year was to work a glance from the slot to the field side, because the high school hashes are so dang wide. We had a lot of success throwing the post to the field side with a longer or deeper speed in from the field. And I've got some really good cut-ups of that to show. So for us, this is attached on most of our run game with a tag that would work similar to an option tag. So the quarterback's really, his option is now off this first level and in the second level. And he's working off of what we predetermine to be the most dangerous defender to the run scheme. And his read is top down. So he's looking for the shot on every single play, unless pre-snap the surface or the coverage, not the surface, but the coverage umbrella tells him it's taken away. And then he works down to what we call his hot read, or a very quick throw that can be thrown very easily right off of the mesh. Okay. So we watched a couple cut-ups of this. It'll make a little bit more sense when you take a look at it. In this scheme specifically here, with that corner being in the position that he's in, we probably would leave the glance on to the bottom of the screen here to the player we determine would be our X guy. Up to the top of the screen, you can see we will read shot first, because the position of the safety here in the middle of the field makes me think that we can win that area over there. Yeah. And so we should be taking a look at that at pre-snap. And for the quarterback, like I said to you before, he's gonna understand that we're trying to run this run play in here. So our attack point really is in the B gap to the left. He's gonna identify the extra run fitter is out there. So the likelihood is that he is going to either throw the shot or he's going to hand the ball off. And the one thing that you'll see that may change that is any kind of interior movement from that force defender, all right, that would kind of pull him down. So what I think when I look at this anyway is I just think it's just one more way philosophically to try to equate numbers and nothing else. I don't teach the footwork after the mesh any different than we would teach our quick game. So we just rock with our back foot. If it's a right-handed quarterback, it's his right foot. We rock with that right foot to try to clear the back, and we only take one step. And what we're trying to do is throw the ball into really the shot zone would be here, and then down to the hot zone if he can throw, if he has outside space anyway.
Yeah.
Similar look. I think he makes a little bit better read here. And looking at the hot, we've got the field side now. We're playing on a college hash, right? So everything looks better offensively when we're playing on the college hashes. It's just prettier in general because it really stretches that defense out, makes them have to honor that glance. All right, but in this case, in his side, he has the choice to throw the shot on either side if we were to call it on either side. Here he chooses to throw the glance to the boundary side, which is just a way to attack this, what a lot of people call the D-gap run fit, right? The extra hat, the extra force defender coming down. What I like about attaching some sort of throw to either side is that you don't always just have to go at the D-gap run for the extra force, the hardest force defender to the run scheme. You can actually attack a weakness in the defense. Whereas if I just tagged one side of it, even though his eyes are over on that side, I may not be able to take advantage of the throw because it may be the matchup may be on the opposite side of the field. And we found that to be a really big deal this year in looking at.
Okay.
Sorry, I got all these markings on
You're good.
And looking at the things that make you successful and the throws that your quarterback can make. For me, I found that our quarterback was equally as comfortable or more comfortable throwing the ball quickly off of a run scheme than he was in any kind of a drop back, traditional drop back pass game. So why squeeze him into a role that for him he's not as comfortable in? And here's an example of that slot fade off the mesh, just really working off of this safety I think he's supposed to be robbing. We're going to play some sort of invert robber coverage here. Just being able to attack that zone right now and for the quarterback to read his shot down to his hot and pull that thing out, throw it into outside space, allows us to at least give the threat of throwing so that we can still be in a base formation. We can still run our base run schemes, which is this case is just power. All right. But do it against maybe a 6-man box instead of a 7-man box.
Okay. Now, from a quarterback development standpoint, what does the time and development process look like for the RPOs off of this?
Yeah, in the last 8 years, I think, in my opinion, it takes a full season before they really understand, before they really feel comfortable with not having their eyes necessarily on the mesh point, but having their eyes in the second level and then seeing outside space like we're talking about here. So I've had some really wonderful kids that I've had a chance to work with. Not all have been world beaters as passers, just put it that way, but all have been very coachable, like extremely coachable. So I see that as they get really 4 or 5 games worth of experience, that their eyes start to understand the space that they can throw into, and they start to really gain a confidence level to be able to leave the ball in the mesh long enough to put a defender in conflict, or in this case, like you'll see here, to be able to identify pre-snap and go really fast in the offense, but able to identify space pre-snap so that all they have to do is flash it and it's over, and now I know where I'm throwing the ball because I know what that coverage is going to allow me post-snap. In high school, we can only disguise so much and really don't see a ton of disguise. There's not as much simulated pressure as everybody would like you to believe. Everybody's practicing it, but then once you go real fast and you get into the game, right, people are just lined up trying to survive. So when I look at the guys that I've had and when the way we've crafted pass game, it to me, it seems it takes about 5 or 6 games, at least half a season to a season, for the kid to really start to feel confident to pull the ball out of the mesh and throw the ball into open space.
Okay. Now, I mean, what was the evolution process like in developing this over the years? And I probably should start
Yeah.
off earlier with that, but how did you end up with the more unbalanced stuff and the RPOs? I mean, obviously you mentioned a little
Yeah.
bit earlier your personnel, but what kind of made you shift to this?
Well, the back of my mind, when I started out, really trying to play around with unbalanced lines, was to try to highlight the best players that we had. And really, when I was doing the most research in the screen, the thing that screamed at me was there are teams who are able to take really interesting looks at the same schemes I'm already running and make it more difficult for the defense to line up and defend them. And there are two groups, two teams that I can point to. Coach Terry Hesbrook at Ithaca High School in Michigan runs an unbalanced 11 personnel, mostly empty, but usually a one back mentality. I went to him for his thoughts on it. And then Thad Wells at the time was at Blacksburg High School and won state championship 2016 after going 5-5 in the regular season. And he just ran the table in the playoffs, won a state championship, and really was able to do some of the similar things. So he gave me some good advice as well. And after that season, I decided that I was gonna make that a primary run play because I absolutely loved how violent and downhill and direct the ball got, and how I could put some of my best players in the point of attack and then protect some of the guys that I didn't have, because I was recruiting a lot of kids out of the hallway just to try to fill a team, and was able to recruit a couple of basketball players who didn't really know a ton about offensive line play, but they were good people and tough kids. And so we could put them in positions where they'd be on the long side and maybe be able to reach people and have the skills to do that, but they shouldn't be on the short side to be able to really get in people's faces and down block and drive people. And that's kind of where it popped off at, was how do I highlight what we have, and how do I take maybe our number one lineman and our only good puller, and then put maybe somebody who wouldn't normally get to play on an offensive line and still have them in the game, because you don't really have any other bodies. So this scheme specifically made it so we could do those things and actually have a successful power run game. And then the RPO stuff, man, that was just stealing. It's really watching other people and learning from them and the schemes that help to make them really successful. And then trying to find ways like, how can I teach a kid these things? How can I teach a quarterback to be able to to run some of the same things and keep it really simple for him, so that if we do get a chance to throw that swing, or we do get a chance to throw that slot fade, or we do get a chance to throw the speed out or speed in, that maybe that saves us from a 1 yard gain and gets us a 4 or 5 yard gain. And the people that I went to are guys like you've had on this show. The people that I studied the most were usually the programs that I saw that were not necessarily the guys that were playing primetime on Saturday.
Yeah.
It was, for the most part, it was the guys playing Thursday nights or Wednesday nights, the MACtion. And the program builders, like you said, Coach Longo, who came from Sam Houston State and was doing some phenomenal things there, and then ended up, at Ole Miss and then North Carolina. Those guys are the ones that I really had a huge influence on the way that I at least looked at crafting and designing schemes for our young kids coming in, and the kids who hadn't really ever done anything like this before.
Okay, Coach. I had two questions for you before we go. And just one, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and not only learn about this, but I mean, you don't have to go super long on this, but what are your like 4 run plays that you like go back to in the end? Because I go back to Dearming just because I watched him recently do a clinic thanks to Coach Bronkhorst, and his 4 are power, counter, inside zone, and buck sweep. Obviously, he worked for Gus Malzahn, so the buck sweep factor.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
we all have our influences. So
Yeah.
those were his like 4 priority plays. Anything else were extra. What are your like 3, 4, 5 priority runs? Obviously, the power wrap scheme, and you're showing us the tight zone on your screen now. But what are your like 3 to 4 priority plays?
Yeah. When we talk about the unbalanced surface, anyway, to me, the short power is number one and king. And then I love to run tight zone, but the second play I install is actually a mid zone or some sort of what you would refer to as a mid zone. I think we call it a wide zone so that our kids get the mentality of it to the field side. So that's the second thing that I love to run, and I think really complements is just a lead or wide zone run play to the long side. And the teaching mentality would be really similar to, and in ideology anyway, would be really similar to anything we were running on our normal 5-man surface. And then for me, I love the tight zone, especially with a split zone mentality with the H-back sealing the backside B gap.
Okay.
I love that as the third play in the install. And then the fourth play in the install for us is our traditional power, just pulling the short side or quick tackle and blocking everybody to the play side and reading the unblocked defender on the backside. Those are really the 4 core plays that I'd consider were the most effective and easiest to transition from a traditional, like you said, Malzahn-based 20 personnel with a blocking fullback, where we're going to run power, counter, we're going to run tight zone, we're going to run buck. If I was going to transition, that would be the 4 easiest. Now, I've played with some other things that I think have a ton of merit. One is the G scheme, all right, to the long side, pulling the inside guard, using him as the kick player, and then using your fullback as a lead and blocking everybody down and back. And I think as I continue to get more comfortable with this, I continue to call it more and design some more variations. I think it's highlighting who you have, but then also what's the defense going to give you. And in some instances in practice with the defenses that we've run against ourselves, there's been some real merit to that. So I can't wait to continue doing that. And if anybody needed to contact me on any of this stuff, like you said, I can put that title line up, and I'm really easy to get in touch with, and I'm happy to share ideas and talk to anybody about it, like you.
Yeah, and like I said, coaches, his contact information in bio is normal. And the last question I got for you before we go, coaches, and you've mentioned some already, like with Thad Wells and up at Ithaca in Michigan.
Yeah, Hasbro.
What is your but each offseason, what is your process for studying and adapting your offense look like? And honestly, this offseason for you is immensely shorter because you guys
Yeah.
played spring ball. But what is a typical off-season process in terms of who you reach out to, who you prefer to watch, and how you look at stuff to add?
Yeah, my first thing is I love to visit high school guys because they deal with the same issues that I do, and they're in many cases they're having to confront the same creative obstacles that I do. So living in my world, I try to find guys who I think are doing something that I've seen on film that I need to know about, and I'm absolutely insatiable in that regard. I can't ever get enough. So I always bring something for them and give them something. And in return, I try to gather as much film and teaching as possible. More than anything, once I get done with our own self study, I really take a look at what's coming back, and I start that creative process of how am I going to get first downs? You know, what are going to be the things that we can hang our hat on? What can we do to be really successful consistently and maximize the people that we have? And then once I figure that out, or once I have kind of a picture of that, I'm going to target guys that I think are in programs, running things, doing things, trying to push the edge on schemes that are in similar boats, or maybe have things that can highlight what we do. And I've gone to visit everybody from all walks of life, and I've been really blessed to have friends and blessed to have people who would have me around, would actually entertain some of the obnoxious ideas that I have, because most of the stuff that I bring up to them is pretty outside the box. But the coaching profession in general is really exceptional, and there's such a wonderful fraternity of men out there willing to share and help each other, and just want to see that somebody else be successful. So this year's being short, I can't do as much of the traveling as I want to, but I've been so thankful in that we've had this Zoom platform, because some people are willing to give me some time on it, and I'm able to go and talk some ball and learn just a ton of stuff without being 8-10 hours in the car.
Coaches, thank you again for listening. As normal, tags on the bottom. Coach's contact information is all on the bottom like normal. So if at any point you want to come back and view anything or reach out to Coach, all that stuff's down there. Make sure you check out the sponsors and affiliates down below. Click on any of the affiliates and buy anything through that. Helps out the channel. And then, as always, like, subscribe, share, helps everything grow, and so people can listen to the coach here. Thank you, and that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.